Ayo, back at it again with another video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So I've been actually wanting to make this video for a long time. I've had the concept of universal basic income in my head for a long time. I think it's a great idea. Obviously, the challenges of UBI is mostly like the logistics, mostly how much and how to pay for it. Those are two big questions when discussing this issue. So I wrote an article. I just released it today. I wrote it a couple days ago. Technically, it is January 13th, early in the morning. So technically, I released it yesterday. But I decided to write an article saying we should probably consolidate different programs such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other programs, consolidate it into one universal basic income program. So that would be a way of having to pay for it. So the age-old question of how to pay for it, that would potentially be answered. So in the United States, we have different programs. It's long past time to consolidate into one program of universal basic income. By doing so, there's so much government bureaucracy surrounding those programs. If you eliminate a bunch of that bureaucracy, then government spending goes down. The spending on these programs we have now would potentially cover all of UBI. So the age-old question of how to pay for it is relatively simple. Obviously, when it comes to government, nothing is simple. We consolidate all the social safety net programs and their spending into one. So these are approximate numbers. This is just absolute bare bones rough mathematics. In 2023, Social Security spending was roughly 1.4 trillion. It's a lot of money. So this is rough data. Social Security in 2023, 21% of the federal budget, or $1.4 trillion, will be paid for Social Security, which will provide monthly retirement benefits to a little under 50 million retired workers. So 1.4 trillion, roughly, give or take. Medicare. So that was 2023 data for Social Security. I was able to only find 2022 Medicare and Medicaid data. So Medicare in 2022, $944-ish billion. Medicaid 2022, roughly $805.7 billion. So 2022, obviously I couldn't find 2023 data. Again, these are approximations. Getting this is very specific numbers out of government spreadsheets is hard. So you take that rough estimate of 1.4 trillion for Social Security, that rough estimate of 944 billion for Medicare, 805 rough estimate for Medicaid. And again, maybe a little outdated because I don't have 2023 numbers. You take that all together, that equals roughly 3.149 trillion. 3 trillion 149 billion dollars. So, and then in the United States, there's roughly 258.3 million Americans over the age of 18 years old, or a little roughly 260 million. That was 2020. Obviously, the age of people fluctuate, but also the amount of people being born in the country and people coming into the country. The numbers basically is roughly 260 million, about 18 years or older. So roughly 260 million people over the age of 18. You have combined spending of 3.149 trillion. We already spend on these programs. You divide that by the 260 million people over the age of 18. 3 trillion 149 billion divided by 260 million people equals approximately $12,000, $111 per year. So a little over 12,000 a year, roughly $1,000 a month. Sounds pretty good to me. And the poverty line in this country is about 12,000. Actually, that's a little outdated information as well, because the individual poverty line is now 14,000. Because, yeah, so 12,000 is not the exact poverty line. I just gave a rough estimate. So if we were to give people over the age of 18 12,000 per year, we wouldn't entirely eliminate poverty. We would drastically reduce it by a significant amount. I mean, by and large, eliminating most of poverty in this country. I see this as a win-win. Less government bureaucracy, which is always a good thing. Less government involvement in bureaucracy, less red tape, less paperwork to fill out, more freedom to spend that money how you want to spend that money. And the cherry on top, we eliminate poverty, or we do enough work to drastically reduce poverty in the country. Either way, I see it as effective. I see it as simple, because right now we're already spending 1.4 trillion roughly on Social Security. We're already spending roughly 945 billion and 805 billion roughly, give or take, on Medicare and Medicaid. You add all those up, you get to approximately 3.149 trillion. Approximately 260 million Americans over the age of 18. That rough math equals out to about $12,000 per year, which, that's going to get you about $1,000 a month, roughly. So we're already spending this money. The age-old question of how to pay for it is, very, very important. But, how do we pay for it? Well, we're already spending it on all these different programs. We're already spending it on different programs that we've implemented over time. Social Security started in the 1930s, President Roosevelt. Medicare and Medicaid started during the 1960s, President Lyndon Johnson. So we've evolved it over time, and at this point, I think it's just easier to consolidate these different programs. And then there's other programs such as food stamps, such as WIC, Women, Infant, and Children. If you consolidate all this spending into one program and just give people the money and the freedom to spend that money how they want to, then there's less need for government bureaucracy. You do a massive number on eliminating or totally eliminating poverty in this country, which, that's great. That would be phenomenal. Consolidating these programs into one program, I think, is a good idea. Obviously, the logistics of how to do it is complicated, but the question of how to pay for it, I don't see as complicated, because we're already spending this massive amount of money on these huge programs. We're already spending over $3 trillion on these programs, roughly. So the question of how to pay for it, well, that answer to that question is simple. We already are paying for it. We just do it in different ways. So that's just my opinion. Obviously, no one asked for my opinion, but I decided to give it anyways, because why not? It's been an idea that I've had for a long time, and I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that this country should absolutely consider. But who knows? Time will tell. UBI has kind of gained traction somewhat in the past couple of years, but who knows? This is just my take on something that I feel could be beneficial. But yeah, that is just my take on the matter. So with that being said, that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. And I will see you on the next one. Deuces.